The soft ticking of the brush faded as Mia opened her eyes to a pale morning. The dream of chronotopia still lingered in her limbs, like stardust clinging to skin. The sun filtered gently through her window, scattering golden freckles across her bedroom wall. Yet the silence felt heavier than usual, as if something was waiting. Her fingers hovered over the paintbrush, now resting motionless in her sketchbook. She didn't need to paint this time. The brush pulsed once silently and the world dissolved beneath her fingertips. When the light returned, Mia stood at the foot of an impossibly vast staircase. It spiraled up and down into infinite directions. Books lined the railings, fluttering their pages like wings. Words floated through the air like dust motes. The scent of parchment and memory was thick. She had arrived at the library of unwritten thoughts. There were no walls. The shelves were suspended in midair, drifting through clouds of silence. Above her, floating librarians with cloaks made of letters glided silently from one book to another, stitching sentences midair. An old bell chimed, not loudly, but with authority. It echoed without urgency, as if reminding time it wasn't in charge here. A tall figure approached. Its eyes glowed soft blue, and its hands trailed ink in the air. "You've arrived," it said. "I am Scripta, the archivist. This is the place where thoughts go when they're never spoken." Mia tilted her head. "You mean secrets?" "Secrets, fears, dreams, things imagined and forgotten," Scripta replied. "Every unwritten story. Every word you wanted to say, but swallowed. Every world that could have been but wasn't." Mia followed as Scripta floated ahead. They passed shelves filled with bottles instead of books, each labeled with a person's name. Some were glowing. Some were cracked. Some were dark as obsidian. "These," said Scripta, "are unspoken regrets. They grow heavy when left too long, but spoken aloud, they dissolve." Mia paused at one. It bore her name. The bottle trembled slightly. Scripta said nothing but waited. She lifted it. Her hands shook. The bottle opened with a sigh. "I never said goodbye," Mia whispered, thinking of someone she once knew, now only in dreams. The bottle melted into mist. A warmth filled her chest, not pain but release. Scripta nodded. "Now you are ready." They ascended higher into the library. Each level held a different kind of thought. One was filled with orbs that glowed with unsent love letters. Another held cages with fluttering questions that had never been asked. Mia stepped carefully among them, feeling their weight, their longing. She reached for a question labeled, "What if I tried?" When she touched it, the question flew into her heart. It didn't hurt. It expanded her. "What do you want me to learn here?" Mia asked. Scripta led her to a chamber filled with blank pages. An entire forest of paper trees stood before her. Their leaves were stories unwritten. "You must write," said Scripta. "Not for others. Not for praise. But for the part of yourself that still listens in silence." A desk appeared, carved from forgotten dreams. The quill was made from her own breath. She sat her day and began to write. She wrote about the child she once was, the one who didn't believe her voice mattered. She wrote about the day she first found color in a world of gray. She wrote about the desert wind, the rhythm of clocks, the laughter in a marketplace of moments. She wrote about her fears, and how they shrank when she named them. She wrote the story of a girl finding her voice not in volume, but in clarity. The pages accepted her truth without judgment. Scripta read none of it, but nodded when she stood. "Now that you've written, the thoughts will not weigh you down. You have freed space within yourself." A gust of wind carried her writings into the air. They folded into paper birds, each glowing faintly. One by one, they flew into the sky, scattering across the universe. Mia felt taller. Not in height but in presence. "Before you go," Scripta said, leading her to one final shelf, "there is one more thing." It was a mirror. Not of glass but of ink. She looked into it and saw herself, but not as she was. She saw every version of her that never spoke. Every time she stayed quiet when she wanted to scream. Every time she whispered when she wanted to sing. Every time she painted what others wanted instead of what she needed. "I forgive you," Mia whispered to her reflection. The ink melted. A new reflection emerged, her standing tall, with colors blooming behind her like wings. The brush in her hand warmed. The library began to dissolve, page by page, thought by thought, until Mia stood once more in her room. But it was no longer the same. Her sketchbook now held pages she had never drawn. Her walls were filled with invisible stories, waiting to be told. And in her chest, the silence no longer weighed her down, it held her up. She sat by the window, not to paint, not to dream, but to simply be. And in that stillness, the world whispered back.